We'll let you go ahead, Vicki.
Okay, sure. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce Frank to those who are on the call and those who will be joining us via the recording. I want to talk a little bit about our relationship with Frank, but Frank Knapp, he is the co-founder of the South Carolina Small Business Chamber of Commerce. He founded the South Carolina Small Business Chamber of Commerce in February of 2000. He currently serves as the president and the CEO of the 5,000 plus member statewide advocacy organization that has taken a leadership role in making South Carolina a more small business friendly in areas such as taxation, regulation, worker training, workers' compensation insurance, utility costs, health insurance, and economic development, and even now, as we're talking today, democracy, businesses for democracy. So he has engaged on a lot of avenues on behalf of small businesses. He currently serves as the director of the Small Businesses for Democracy campaign of our sister organization, American Sustainable Business Network, and the national coordinator for the National Coalition Reform for the SBA Bigger Mission Authority resources, which we just spoke about. Frank serves on the advisory board for the South Carolina Small Business Development Center and was recognized by the SBA as the 2014 South Carolina Small Business Financing Advocate of the Year. And through 2015 and 17, he served as the U.S. Small Business Administration's Region 4 Regulatory Fairness Board and advisory body to the SBA and National Ombudsman. And I wanted to read that. I know Frank probably didn't want to hear all that, but I wanted everyone on the call to really see his long-time commitment to helping small business engage in making certain that we create policies and laws that benefit us. I am proud to call him a partner. I've been working closely with him now, I guess almost 3 or 4 years. We've been in partnership through our mutual work with the American Sustainable Business Council. So we're working nationally and then on the state level. So ASBN helps us keep our pulse on, finger on the pulse of what's happening regarding small business. And then we have, Frank and some others who also work here to make certain that businesses are part of growing a strong and fair democracy. So with that, Frank, I'm going to let you introduce our 2 presenters for the day, but I wanted to just say thank you for our partnership, and I welcome our presenters, and I'll let you take it from there.
Well, thank you, Vicki, and thank you and the North Carolina Business Council for all that you do in North Carolina to advance the voice of small businesses and addressing those needs. So we are here today. I'm here as the director of the Business for Democracy campaign of the American Sustainable Business Network. We have partnered with Rank the Vote nationally, and in North Carolina, it's Better Ballot North Carolina, and this is a webinar that's going to help your members, Vicki, in understanding what ranked choice voting is all about. And we hope to gain their support and the support of your organization. The Better Ballot North Carolina is a nonpartisan, nonprofit North Carolina organization rapidly building support for ranked choice voting through grassroots organizing. And I mean, I'm caught because I'm waiting for the slide to advance, Lenny. There you are. And I'm going to have Lenny's going to join us in this conversation. Lenny is a husband, a father, a startup exec, investor, 10-year NFL offensive lineman. You don't want to mess with Lenny, and an MMA fan and fiercely independent thinker. So thank you, Lenny. And Fair Vote is who we also work closely with, and who I'm going to introduce Rachel in a second. But Fair Vote is a nonpartisan organization seeking better elections for all, and they research and advance voting reforms that make democracy more functional and representative for every American. And now let me tell you a little bit about Rachel. Rachel conducts research and data analysis in support of Fair Vote's advocacy mission. She is an experienced researcher and writer in the electoral reform space and an expert at utilizing theory and scholarship to bolster democratic reforms, accelerate campaigns, and counter opposition. Rachel has a bachelor's degree in politics and sociology from Newcastle University. And we're going to actually start with Lenny. Rachel will come on here second as we move through our slides. So let's go ahead. Lenny, take it away from here.
Great. Appreciate the introduction, Frank, and look forward to presenting with Rachel today. We have a good amount of slides. Some of them we're going to go through really quickly. Others we're going to take our time. Super informal. So please, if you have any questions, want me to clarify anything, please don't hesitate to chime in and ask questions. So to start with, we're going to discuss these three topics. First, why do American politics feel so broken? Why can't Congress get things done? Why is America so divided? Why are voters disengaged? And we can talk about that disengagement later on. And for many of us, why isn't there a candidate that we really like? And then next, as part of that, what's the root cause? What is driving this? And as business leaders, I think we can all attest that if you show me what people are incentivized to do, we'll show you what their behavior will be. And given that, and given all above, how can we fix this? So I look forward to this discussion today. I look forward to speaking with all of you about ranked choice voting. And with that, we're going to get right into it. So for those of you around in 2000, you can remember this election. George Bush and Al Gore were separated by 537 votes at the end of the election. This is a textbook example of the spoiler effect. Frontrunners Bush and Gore were an extremely tight race. And there was a third-party candidate, Ralph Nader, who had 97,480 votes in Florida. Exit polls, so we're not making any assumptions here, exit polls showed that Ralph Nader voters preferred Gore 45%, 27% preferred Bush, and 28% would have not voted. So this is exit polling. These are not anyone's assumptions on what those voters would have chosen. At the end of the day, Ralph Nader was assumed the spoiler. And those that voted for Nader may have felt that they threw their votes away, and that the majority of voters in the country would have preferred Al Gore 50.4% to the eventual candidate, the eventual winner, 4.96%. So this is as classic of a spoiler effect as it gets. And to rest assured that this is not a Democrat versus Republican, those of us who were around in 92 saw something very similar occur.
Yep, Ross Perot.
That's exactly right. So in 1992, Ross Perot had 19%, pretty significant, 19% as a third-party candidate. Same type of scenario where if you looked at exit polling, the exit polling showed that the vast majority of Ross Perot voters would have voted for George W. Bush. So this is not partisan. This is not Democrat versus Republican. This is simply the system we have creates a spoiler effect, and that's massive. And it's not just massive in national elections. Potential spoiled elections, how common is it? So it's not just two. It's not just those two big ones we mentioned, 1992 and 2000. But 49 U.S. senators from 27 states. And while I'm not the most educated, I know we have only 50 states, so more than half. 49 senators from 27 states were elected with less than majority support, 50%. I've done presentations with Rank the Vote and Fair Vote. And one of the worst outcomes I heard is one person was elected, I believe, in Iowa with 14% of the vote. And that's because of the system we have in winner take all. So let's talk through some other examples. In 2016, there was a very crowded primary elections with Republicans. There were 16, I believe it was, 16 candidates running, and drastically split the vote. 60% of the GOP wanted someone other than Donald Trump. But because of the system we have, those votes were split and a plurality candidate won. How would that have potentially been different with ranked choice voting when you could rank the votes? So in primaries, how common is non-majority winners? Of 435 representatives in Congress, less than half won their first primary as a majority. 20%, 1 in 5, had 35% support or less. In North Carolina, this has happened multiple times over the last previous election cycles on both sides of the aisle. In the primaries, Democrats are elected with less than 33% of the votes. Republicans are elected with less than 33% of the votes. That means nearly 70% of the electorate wanted someone else. We need to be able to change that. So what does our current system lead to? Well, if you only need a plurality, and those of you that don't vote for you don't matter at all because there is no second or third, then it creates an absolutely polarized electorate. It's not whether or not I'm the best, and it's not whether or not that I believe in much of what other candidates believe. It's how do I prove that I'm a little bit better than the other guy? And that creates incredibly rancorous debates. It creates polarization. And it's all about bashing your opponent, not about what you really stand for. We talk about polarization. We talk about the vitriol in our politics. You show me the incentives, which is what a plurality vote is. You show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome. Our system sets up this polarization. So the primary problem. In primary elections, you have very, very low turnout. One example is Charlie Baker, the most popular governor in the US, didn't run for election not because of term limits, because he was unlikely to survive his own primary election. The small party base was dominated by supporters that didn't want him, and because there was an RCV, he had no chance of winning. So this is literally a primary problem where you get so few voters out. The only voters that want to come out are the most fired up, and often the extremes of either the left or the right. %80 of the congressional seats in our country, 80% are safe for one party, not competitive at all. Nobody wants to run against them because they know they don't have a chance. The dominant party is essentially the only party and therefore the general election. Low primary voter turnout and no majority requirement means that these seats can be held hostage by a relatively small, motivated partisan base. Again, in North Carolina, there's been Republican and Democratic candidates elected in their primaries with less than 33% of the vote. That does not represent the majority. That is not the way elections are supposed to be held. This leads electeds to cater to those more extreme factions rather than the needs of the majority to avoid being primaried. So if you know in your primary that only the extremes are coming out to vote, you are going to gear your promises, you're going to gear your campaigning to that group of electorates. So there's absolutely the incentive to go more extreme, whether you're the left or the right, to get your voters out. So polarizations. This is what happens when voters don't have a ballot that gives them the power to vote for who they really want. In a trend called negative partisanship, we are liking our own party less and hating the other party more and more. So it's not a matter of, yeah, I really love the candidate that represents my beliefs. It's, I don't like the candidate that represents my beliefs, but I like them a little bit more than the other guy who I can't stand at all. That's not a way to run politics. That's not a way to run our country. This is the ultimate result of low choice elections, voting out of fear and dislike for the lesser of two evils. And I hate that statement. I really don't like this candidate, but they're the lesser of two evils. I really don't like him, but he's better than her. I really don't like her, but she's better than him. That's not what we want for leadership. We want people to be excited about leadership. We're all business people here. Can you imagine your CEO and the only reason you have the CEO is because they were slightly more likable than the other person? Not that they were the best, not that they were visionary, they just were slightly more liked than the other person. All this negativity leads to toxic campaigning and polarizing primary incentives that are leading to this. Again, back to the primaries. If the only people coming out to vote are the most extremes, then our candidates are making promises to those extremes, and those are the ones that they're going to support if they get elected. In this country, elections are supposed to be the backstop, the safety net, the corrective mechanism for when things are going wrong in our democracy. But because of plurality, because of the primary systems, because of polarization, the way we do our elections is now actually making things worse. Our one-pick voting system is failing. It's restricting the freedom to run without being a spoiler for candidates. So in today's world, if you take us back to 1992 and you really like Ross Perot, but you know what the outcome is going to be, you're not going to vote for him. If you really like Ralph Nader in 2000, but now you understand the spoiler effect, you're not going to vote for him. So it's restricting the freedom to run without being a spoiler for candidates. So third-party candidates really have to think, do I want to run? So in today's news cycle, there's several third-party candidates in North Carolina, several third-party candidates nationally. They're debating whether or not they should run because they might have a spoiler effect. And that's not what we want. We want the best and brightest running. It's restricting our freedom of choice in the voting booth. So if you did like a third-party candidate, if you did like a different Democrat in the primary or a different Republican in the primary, they're not incentivized to run because they've got no chance. Either they've got no chance or they're going to be perceived as a spoiler. We need to change that so we can get our best and brightest running. Just to hit it home one more time, the spoiler outcomes are impacted when more than two candidates run in a plurality system. 1992, 2000, 2016 with the Republican primary. This undermines the wish of majority people by creating divisive candidates that only succeed in the primary fields. Again, 80% of our primaries are in safe fields that the candidate is all but assured to win. This all distracts from healthy issue-based campaigns. So when you listen to a campaign and it's all about why this person or that person is terrible, that's not a campaign of ideas. That's not telling us how to move the country forward. All it's saying is how bad the other person's going to be. That's not what we want. Again, all of us here are business leaders. We don't want to hear why this or that path is terrible or why the person across the table for us has no idea what they're talking about. We want to know what are our best options. Let's have a healthy debate. Let's discuss around all the different ways that this particular thing can benefit or not just hearing how their idea is terrible. This all feeds division through a dangerous cycle of polarization and toxic partisan attacks. This country is divided. It's not one America. It's my party versus your party. And I don't even have a party leader that I like. I just like them a little bit better than the other party. That's not what we want. There's a way to change this, and it's a simple change. It's called ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting is not complicated. It's been used around the country for years. It's been used around the world for almost a century. This is nothing new. Simply, instead of picking just one candidate, you have ranked choice voting. You rank the candidates you want. You can rank more than one candidate, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can rank them all if you like, or you can just rank the one. That's fine. You rank them in the order you prefer them. This is a simple current ballot. Four candidates and a write-in. How is it different with ranked choice voting? Simple. You pick your first, second, third, fourth, or fifth choice. Again, you don't have to select all 5. Obviously, the write-in is a 5th. You can select just 2, 3, 4, or really, if you only have 1, you can still just select the 1. No one's forcing you to do more than that. People say this is complicated, but really, we make decisions like this all day long. This is an interactive piece, but I can't see everybody's face, unfortunately, because I'm in the presenter mode. So I'll just talk through it. Here's an example, right? You go to get a dessert and you rank your desserts. Which is your favorite? What if they don't have one? What if really cookies is your number 1 choice and you're at a restaurant and they say, well, we're out of cookies. Does that mean you're done? I'm not. I'll take the vanilla bean ice cream. And if that's out, I'll have some fruit. We rank our thoughts all the time. There is nothing new about this. Certainly in business, we rank opportunities all the time, right? Think about when we're looking to hire someone. You have first choice, second choice, third choice. If the first choice takes another job, you still need somebody. You're happy with your second choice. You don't say, well, the first choice not there, I'm done. This is not hard, and it's been done all around the country for a long time. So let's go through an example. We've got an example of 4 candidates, and we're going to count. Everybody gets a chance to vote. Everybody gets a chance to rank their vote. If results come in, and in this situation, the candidate on the left had 55% of the vote. That's a majority. It's done. Game over. Simple. No problem. This would be true in any election. Go back to 1992 with Ross Perot, George W. Bush, and Al Gore. 1992, Clinton, sorry. 1992 would be Ross Perot, George H.W. Bush, and Bill Clinton. If any of them won 55% of ranked choice voting, it would be over. So that's the same, that doesn't change. You don't have to have multiple rounds. But in a, so sorry, this is, I jumped the gun. In this particular one, the majority won the first round, it's done. But let's run another election. Different candidates. In the first round, there is no majority winner. This is not a plurality election. North Carolina, 40% would have won the primary. But we're doing ranked choice voting here. You need a majority. You need that 50% plus 1 vote. In the first round, there was no majority vote. So we go to the second round. During the second round, you eliminate the candidate with the least support, in this case, light orange. And you transfer the votes to those who voted their second choice candidate. Now, I want to take a second here because I get a lot of questions when I do presentations on ranked choice voting. Does that mean that the people who voted for the light orange candidate, they get to vote twice? Absolutely not. This is an instant runoff. In the second round, all votes are counted again. All votes. If you voted for the candidate on the left here, the orange candidate, in the first round, your vote gets counted again. They're still your number 1 choice. Your candidate is still there. You're still going to pick them as your number 1 choice. Everybody's vote gets counted again. Nobody gets more than 1 vote per round. That's it. So in this scenario, round 1, no one had majority. Round 2, the candidate with the light orange, they only had 5%. All their votes go back in. Their second choice gets chosen. Still in round 2, no majority, no 50%. But you can see how which candidates picked up the light orange voters. Round 3, well, this time the candidate with the least votes had 20%. Their votes were eliminated. We had instant runoff. Everybody's votes were counted again. Again, everybody's vote is counted again. Round 3, we now have a majority winner at 55%. I want to pause. Is there any questions here?
Yes, Lenny, because I think I was understanding it a little differently. I say, let's go back to that 20% person with the 20%. Now, my understanding is just that 20% is divided up. So not everybody, when you say everybody's vote counts again in that third round, isn't it just the redistributing whoever voted for that person with the 20%?
It's a great question. I want to spend a lot of time here. So when you say redistributed, you get people say, wait a second, their vote counts again. Their vote doesn't count again. This is an instant runoff election. So let's think about what happens in an instant runoff election. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, you guys remember the past 2 elections in Georgia, where they didn't have a majority winner and they had to run elections again. Mm-hmm. So what happens when they run elections again? They go back to the polls. They spend literally billions of dollars for the candidates to market themselves again, even though they just did it for 2 years. They go back to the elections and everybody votes again, right? That's a runoff. Same thing is happening here. This is just an instant runoff. So why I'm spending time here, and Rachel, please jump in if you want to comment. Nobody's vote is counted twice. In each round, essentially, everybody's ballot is counted again. If your first choice candidate is no longer there, your second choice gets pulled up. But if your first choice candidate is there, your vote gets counted again. Nobody gets 2 votes or 3 votes or 4 votes. Everybody gets 1 vote per round. It's an instantaneous runoff. Gotcha. The difference being here, you're not spending billions of dollars and rerunning the campaign and getting lower voter turnout on the second go round. It happens instantaneously. Rachel, I'm going to be quiet and let you chime in.
No, I think you did it justice.
So it's really important. I know people say it gets redistributed, but it's really not a redistribution. People think that means some voters get more than one vote. One person, one vote. It is bedrock of our democracy. It is the same in ranked choice voting. It's just an absolute instant runoff. Does that help answer your question? I take that silence as maybe not. If you have more questions, please ask about it. This is really important. In each round, everybody's ballot gets counted again. Everybody gets one vote. If your candidate that you chose is no longer there, your second vote gets pulled up to your first vote, but people who voted for the 44% on the left, their vote still counts. People who voted for that middle blue, their vote is counted again. It's an instant runoff. See some comments in the chat.
Lenny, I have a question.
Yep.
And this is one of the pushbacks I've heard for ranked choice voting from others when I've asked about it or talked about it. If you have more than 3 candidates running,
yep,
and your first choice, say in the example you gave, is for the 5% candidate, and your second choice is for the 20% candidate,
yep,
then in round 3, you no longer have a vote. Is that right?
No. So if you voted for 3 candidates or 4 candidates or 5 candidates, then your vote still counts. Absolutely.
Oh, so in ranked choice voting, you vote for all the candidates, you just rank them.
You could, that's right. You can vote for all of them or just one. Now, if you only voted for 2,
I got you.
In the next round, you basically opted out.
Okay. Got you.
Yep. Any other questions? Questions are great. Me and Rachel can talk all day, but we'd love to hear from you guys. Okay. Please, I can't always see everybody because I've got the presenter view on. So Vicky, Frank, if you see something and somebody wants to ask a question, please hail me down. So that's it. I mean, it really is as simple as that. And I like using the term instant runoff because that's what it is. In Georgia, there was a runoff that cost billions of dollars. In ranked choice voting, that is done upfront by ranking your candidates. No billions of dollars, no more vitriol. Who's your first, second, and third choice? Just like in business, you interview 5 great candidates. You're going to take your 1 or 2 because you need to fill the position. And if the first one gets hired away, you're very happy with your second choice. You don't throw up your hands and walk away. When I'm buying dessert, if they don't have my favorite, I'm going for the next second, third, or fourth. I promise you, I'm getting dessert. All right. So RCV in practice. So I really, really like this slide. Our neighbor to the north, the great Virginia, which I lived in for many years. For anybody asks, as a Washington Redskin and also as a businessman, love Virginia. Virginia, for their GOP primaries, used ranked choice voting in 2021. They had a split field, and Youngkin was leading the field, but by no majority. He had a candidate at 25 or 26% just below him, and Chase at 20% below that candidate. Ranked choice voting allowed the Virginia Republican voters to choose who they wanted. Round 1 was no majority. Eventually, though, they did get to Glenn Youngkin at 54.7%. The other candidates were eliminated, as everybody knows, and this is not partisan, this is not Republican versus Democrat. Ranked choice voting led to a Republican candidate that took the Virginia governorship after they haven't had it for many years. This is just to the north of us, just in 2021. In Maine, another example. Peloquin was leading in the first round. The way we vote now, he would have been declared the winner, 46%. He had the plurality, call it a day, it's done. But that would mean that 53% wanted someone else. However, with ranked choice voting, the candidates that were removed from the ballot and the instant runoff occurred, Golden ended up winning. So without ranked choice voting, you wouldn't have had a majority candidate. Now, 50% of the voters in Maine, 50.6%, got the candidate they wanted. That is the beauty of ranked choice voting. There was no wasted votes. There was no spoiler impact. Independent candidates did not have to worry about pulling votes from someone else. They were allowed to have a battle of ideas, not a battle of mudslinging. That is the beauty of ranked choice voting.
Lenny, I think we have a hand up.
Great.
Call, you have a question? Go ahead. I saw your chat, but you can ask your question.
Yeah, I just wonder what the barriers are in North Carolina to get this accomplished. I know we don't have referendums or initiatives, so we can't do this democratically through voting by the people. So it has to go through, I assume, the General Assembly. Is there support, and is it bipartisan if there is?
Fantastic question. Correct.
And maybe Lenny, Carl, will you be with us until the end of the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, good. Can we address that then when the presentation's over?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was over. I'm sorry.
See, Lenny, you intimidated him.
That's right. No, happy to talk to it at the end. I know exactly what you're talking about. I can get into the details of how we will eventually get ranked choice voting in North Carolina. But we can save it to the end, no problem. So this is Australia. Australia has been doing this literally, I think, 99 years. So in Australia, unsatisfied with failure to address misconduct towards women within Parliament and with a lack of action on climate change, a member of Australia's Conservative Party called the Liberal Party broke away, ran and won as independents in 2022. This will give them more momentum for the policies they care about in the new Parliament. So again, ranked choice voting is not new. I literally think it's been around for 99 years in Australia. Rachel, you can fact check me. You know the details better than I do. But it encourages independence. It encourages additional candidates because there is no spoiler effect. It doesn't take away from people that are most similar to you. It adds to more debate for all candidates. This talks about the incentives. So this is the former Minneapolis Mayor, Betsy Hodges. Under ranked choice voting, candidates need the broad support of a majority of voters to win. To do this, they must earn their second and third rankings from their opponent supporters. You avoid mudslinging, which would alienate supporters. So if you have 3 or 4 candidates that you're running against, I don't care who the candidates are, there's likely to be a few things you agree with them on. There might be a lot of things you don't, but there's going to be a few things you agree with them on. You're going to more cater to those things than mudslinging, because if you're not a voter's first choice, you do want to be their second and third. And therefore, you're going to communicate more where you are alike. Highlight your differences for sure, but communicate where you're alike. So in the chance that that candidate doesn't make it to the second or third round, those voters would think of you. That has a huge difference. Campaigning under a plurality system, if you're ever canvassing door to door and you see a sign in someone's yard, you're automatically thinking, well, I've lost this, I'm just going to move on, right? You're not going to change that this person is voting for Ross Perot and you're pulling for George H.W. Bush or Bill Clinton, right? You're going to see that as a loss. That's what plurality voting gets you. However, in ranked choice voting, if you see that, you're going to knock on the door and say, hey, look, I know that you're supporting Ross Perot or you're supporting Ralph Nader or you're supporting George Bush. But let me tell you about my candidate. Yeah, they don't agree on everything, but they do agree on a lot. And let me tell you where their similarities are. I know you're voting for Ross Perot, but if he doesn't win, I'd like to be your second choice or third choice. That's the benefit of ranked choice voting. And as business leaders, again, I'll say it. You show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome. Show me where politicians are incentivized to be the second or third choice of voters, and I'll show you a more humble, a more open discussion, not a vitriolic one, not a polarized one. And this is not just theory. Voters consistently report less negativity in ranked choice voting studies. In 2020, text-based assessment analysis showed that ranked choice voting improved debates with candidates substituting negative or neutral words for positive words. In 2018, 67% of voters in Santa Fe's first ranked choice voting race reported it was less negative. 2014, 2 polls. Voters in ranked choice voting cities observed less negativity than when they had plurality systems. 2013 sentiment analysis of press in RCV cities shows more positive language. This is not a surprise. This is incentives. You want to be a person's second or third choice if you're not their first. Therefore, you're not going to call their baby ugly. You're not going to say the candidate that is their first choice is terrible. You're going to say, yeah, we're different, but let me show you where we are alike. And if your candidate doesn't win, I'd love to be your number 2. How can we solve the primary problem? Upgrading elections to ranked choice voting or final 5 voting, which is just a slight variation. There's no more anointing winners by small partisan factions in the primaries. No more only the extremes win. More real choice. You're not worried about a spoiler effect. You're not worried about running multiple candidates. You have much larger, more representative groups going for then go to the general election. And then you allow the people to decide after great debate about important topics, not just mudslinging, not just why that guy is terrible and I'm just a little better. A better ballot for a primary process for nominating broadly supported candidates. Ranked choice voting works great in primaries, works great in general election. Let's have great debate, just like we all want in our businesses. Let's understand what all the sides of an issue are so we can make our best decision on a candidate. I love this word, incentivizes civil campaign. With that, I talked a lot. I am very, very positive you guys are ready for me to pass on the baton. With that, I'll do it to Rachel, and I can stay after Rachel's discussion, and we can talk about any of the Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Lenny. That's so great. If you can go to the next slide, please. So as Frank introduced me earlier, hello, everyone. I'm Rachel. My job is to research what ranked choice voting actually looks like in practice. So all the benefits that Lenny talked about are so great, but the coolest part is that we can actually point to the places in the US that use it and confirm that these benefits are true. So ranked choice voting is used by over 50 jurisdictions in the US. Notably, Maine and Alaska use it for a lot of their statewide and federal elections. So, in general elections, it really solves that spoiler problem Lenny was talking about. Dozens of municipalities use it for their local elections, namely New York, San Francisco, Minneapolis, Salt Lake City. And this is a really popular way to get rid of like the runoff elections that a lot of places use for their municipal elections because the runoff's just instant then. And also a great use in primaries. So I think 4 or 5 states used it in their 2020 Democratic presidential primaries. We're hoping for a few more. This is a way to really just make sure that whoever the nominee is actually really represents that party, represents the brand, the values, and is going into whatever general election with really strong support. So again, reaching like millions, over 10 million voters in the US right now. It is on its way. It's got a lot of steam going. If you could go to the next one, please. So here are just some facts about what we've learned about how ranked choice voting actually works when we use it. So it's won 22 of the last 25 ballot measures in the last couple of years. So as a reminder, a ballot measure is when people or legislators decide to refer the question to voters at the ballot box and they're asked, do I want to use ranked choice voting in my future elections? And obviously the answer is overwhelmingly yes, because so many places do it. It's a very voter-driven, voter-asked for reform. Again, we have over 10 million people living in the over 50 places that use it. And we've actually studied, there are over like 500 elections that have used ranked choice voting since I think 2004. And in our database of these, we found that a median of 71% of people actually use the opportunity to rank multiple candidates. So shows that there's good buy-in to the system. People actually want and like picking multiple. And then for highly competitive races, such as New York City used it for their municipal primary elections in 2021, it was closer to 90%. So in a competitive election where we know there's votes going to be split between a lot of candidates, people are smart. They know that like their second or third or fourth choice might actually come into play theirs. So they know that they're going to need to use their rankings. In all ranked choice voting elections since 2004, 73% of ballots rank a winning candidate in their top 3. We call this a consensus value, meaning the people who are actually winning these elections have the consensus and the support of a broad group of voters, whether that's first choice and some second and third choice support too. A criticism we get a lot is, this is so complicated, this is so new, voters aren't going to grasp it. But every exit poll from an actual ranked choice voting election shows that that is complete bogus. In New York, when they used it for the first time, 95% of them found it simple and over 75% wanted to use it again. A couple dozen places in Utah have also used it for their municipal elections, where 88% of them said they were either very satisfied or satisfied after using ranked choice voting. So we definitely got the numbers to back up all the things we're saying. If we can go to the next slide, please. So you might be wondering, why should you as the business community care about this other than just a general interest in what's good for democracy? And I would say it's very reflective of free market values. So we know that this could give us more choice because new and diverse startup candidates feel like they can run without having to wait their turn or spoil or waste votes. So then we, as the voter, get more choice on the ballot. And we know how this works in the business world. When a brand or company has to compete against several other brands, they better well be the best one if they're going to attract your attention. And they have incentive to constantly innovate and be better and deliver. Compared to politics, at a general election, we often only have 2 choices. And so really the only job qualification is to just be a little bit better than the other person. And you can probably do that by just trashing them than actually being a high quality candidate yourself. So when voters have this choice in competition, candidates actually have to compete to be the best product to offer, to deliver results to their constituents, to address issue salience across the ideological spectrum. And that's why these types of reforms really aim to make politicians more accountable, just like businesses are held accountable by the free market. And on the next slide, that's why we have people like business titan Mark Cuban endorsing it. He says, this is exactly why I support ranked choice voting. It's a major step towards making politicians responsible to voters before and after they're elected, and it's a better model for the business of politics. So next one, please. Another reason that might be relevant to the business community, ranked choice voting and similar reforms really just want to make our government work better. Because, when you're incentivized to be accountable to a majority of your electorate and, you need broad support from maybe people who wouldn't have voted for you typically, you really have incentive to act when you're in Congress and earn the votes of the majority of people and be willing to compromise and work across the aisle and, make legislation happen. We know that that's not really how it works today. People are often in politics, they're just accountable to a really small, maybe extreme base of voters. And that's why they go into office and can't get anything done and can't agree on anything, because that would upset their base. And as a result, if Congress or a state legislature can't really get things done, a lot of the nitty-gritty policy that actually has to happen in order for society to function is going to fall to the executive. So either that's the governor or the president, maybe the mayor of your town, whoever. And what can happen is, the president's in office for 8 years, we have another election, it goes to the other party. The new president or governor is going to maybe repeal everything their predecessor did and do new stuff. And this just creates a giant headache for business owners, for example, who just want to know, what policies and rules do I have to follow? Whatever they want to be, at least I wish they were consistent. So if instead we could make sure that our legislatures were actually working better, they could create more durable policies that affect businesses, just creates less of a headache, so you know what rules you have to follow. Next one, please. And this last slide I have here is sort of electoral reform 2.0. So I have heard that this group is particularly interested in gerrymandering and redistricting reform. And this is something that is certainly very well paired with ranked choice voting. So to give an example, there's this federal legislation called the Fair Representation Act. It's something that would affect how all Congress election works, and it's what my organization and a few others vouch for. And the main tenet is right now we have single member districts. You can see a map of New Jersey here. The left one is how things actually work, where we have 12 districts, each gets 1 representative. So how this would work instead is now we have bigger districts with multiple representatives, anywhere from 3 to 5. So In this picture, New Jersey could look like it has 4 districts, each represented by 3 people. And so the idea here is it's enshrined in this legislation that you can't draw a district that is like predominantly Republican or predominantly Democrat. So no matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you feel like one of the several representatives represents you. Each is going to likely have at least 1 Democrat and 1 Republican. And because we're electing multiple winners instead of 1, we use this thing called proportional ranked choice voting. It's a way to use the same sort of ranked ballot, but just to elect multiple people. And I won't get into like the mechanics of it, but basically it makes sure that parties are elected in proportion to the vote they share instead of just, you know, winner take all, and people in the minority party in their district feel like they don't have any representation. And so one of the benefits about this is now on the ballot, we have several Democrats and several Republicans competing for the same set of seats, which is a big difference because right now, if I'm a Democrat in a Democratic district and I win the primary, that's it. All I need is that little like D party Q on the ballot to win the general. Great. Here, if you're competing against people from the other party and your party, you can't just rely on your party label anymore. You really have to compete to be the best candidate out there. You have to deliver on your promises, and you have to stand out from the other people in your party as well as the other party. And a final point on that is that now that we would have like a slate of legislators coming from each district and, you know, who during election time really want to get each other's second and third choice votes from their supporters, they are now incentivized to work as a team and maybe go into Congress like as a slate and work together. And one way they could do that is by really focusing on local issues and trying to bring some things back for their constituents. So that is my end of the presentation. I unfortunately have another meeting at 3 o'clock, so I'm unable to stick around for the Q&A, but my email is right here. So any follow-up questions, or if you just want to chat or ask things, please email me. It's just Rachel@Fairvote. And thanks to Lenny. It was so cool to present with you, and to Frank and Vicki as well.
Thank you, Rachel. We appreciate it. Go on to your next meeting.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you so much for joining us. And I will say, for those who asked in a private note, we will be able to share the slides. So those will be made available as well as the recording. So I know this is great information. I know you guys want to hold on to it. So we will make that available to you as well.
And Vicki, let's go ahead and address some of the questions that were put in the chat, and then we'll open it up to others. Carl wanted to know if the perceived complexity of ranked choice voting is due to our I guess our poor math education. And I also want to know is how will we move forward ranked choice voting in North Carolina? Lenny, do you want to talk about math education and perceived complexity?
Yeah, so I think perceived complexity is really a wedge that people that are against ranked choice voting use, right? So ranked choice voting has been used in almost every single southern state for the U.S. military for a few years now. I think North Carolina is one of the only southern states for the U.S. military that doesn't use ranked choice voting. It's been used by 16 million people throughout the U.S. It's been used by Australians for 99 years. So my question to people to say it's too complex is, do they think we're dumber than the rest of the people? That's my honest answer. I mean, it's been around and been used by millions of people. It's used in media scenarios around the country. It's used to elect professional basketball players to the All-Star game. It's a perceived complexity because it's used as a wedge talking point to distract people. You saw all the evidence that Rachel provided about people that have used ranked choice voting. Something like 75% want to do it again. So it really is a misnomer and just a wedge issue. So while there's likely issues with our math education in this country, ranked choice voting is too simple for that to be an issue, in my opinion.
Thank you. And in conjunction with Carl's question about how to move forward in North Carolina, Arthur was asking about, specifically pointing out that he believed that the two-party system, that the two parties are part of the barrier to moving forward with ranked choice voting. Lenny?
Yeah, so and everybody's familiar with, or most of you will be familiar with the comment that those in power want to remain in power, right? So whatever, and this is not, in North Carolina, there are clearly a Republican majority in our Congress, but this is not about North Carolina. Massachusetts had a Democratic majority in their Congress. Those in power want to keep power. Ranked choice voting is a potential to upset the apple cart. So those in power are going to be reticent to implement it. That's the truth. If you're the minority party, you're likely to be more supportive of implementing ranked choice voting. If you're the majority party, you're probably not. And that's been shown throughout the country, given which parties are kind of putting a thumbs down to ranked choice voting when they have the power. So I can show you examples of Democrats voting it down, Republicans voting it down, and both.
So then the question becomes, in Ohio, I'm sorry, I jumped to Ohio because they have a ballot initiative there. The public can actually change the law in Ohio.
Yep.
Not in North Carolina, nor in South
Correct.
Carolina, where I am. The General Assembly, the legislature, is responsible for telling municipalities even how they can elect their people. So how do we deal with if two parties are the barriers? In this case, I guess it's the Republican Party in North Carolina, as it is in South Carolina. If they are a part of the barrier, how do you get them to allow even municipalities to use ranked choice voting?
Great question. So I want to talk about that. I wouldn't say that both parties are against it. Again, it's those in power want to keep in power. Those that are not in power are much more to be supportive. In North Carolina, that just happens to be the Democratic Party. In Massachusetts, the Republican Party is more supportive of ranked choice voting based on some of the information I've read, but don't quote me on it. We can ask Rachel that. Though the party in power doesn't want to upset the apple cart, the minority power is much more willing to do so. In North Carolina, you need the General Assembly to approve, but there's more than just that simple statement. The General Assembly can approve for the entire state. They can say, we're going to have a blanket approval that if whoever wants to use ranked choice voting, go ahead. That's probably a heavier lift. There are also options in North Carolina for a local only bill. So take any municipality in North Carolina. If they come together and said their voters want ranked choice voting, and they request the General Assembly allow that specific municipality and that municipality only to have ranked choice voting, that is also possible. So the General Assembly has to approve, but it doesn't have to approve for the entire state. So at Better Ballot North Carolina, one of our paths is to find municipalities that within that municipality want ranked choice voting, and to find municipalities across the political spectrum and across the rural and urban spectrum that want to see ranked choice voting, and get those municipalities to petition the General Assembly for a local only bill. So the only two ways are either local only bill, where the General Assembly says, hey, this is what Washington, North Carolina wants, just because I have some great friends in Washington, North Carolina, or Greenville, North Carolina wants, or Clayton, North Carolina wants. The General Assembly is not going to stand in way when a municipality says, yes, I want it. We're going to let you go ahead and do it. That's probably the easier lift than having the General Assembly approve it statewide.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I don't know if that's the same in South Carolina, Frank, in North Carolina.
Well, I mean, as an aside, we actually have a bill in our house that would allow any municipality to use it if they want to. That bill hasn't moved. We probably could do local bills, but right now we're focusing on trying to do a statewide bill.
Yeah, I think Carl had one quick question about Canada. Just wanted to make sure we answered that.
Multiple member districts. Carl said, does Canada use multiple member districts, as what Rachel was talking about? And the answer is, I don't know the answer.
Okay.
I second Frank's response.
Okay.
Sorry, Carl.
Yeah. So
I just remember reading about something in British Columbia that dealt with that, and it was quite intriguing. And I was just like, wow.
Yeah. Okay.
Vicki, let me say something more about gerrymandering. And I know that Rachel talked about sort of other mechanisms for electing people in gerrymandered districts, and I understand all that. But let me just talk about how ranked choice voting is a positive impact, even in heavily gerrymandered districts.
I'm gonna let you do that. Let me just, I know we still have several people online, and I'm grateful that they're still there. We are over, so I appreciate it. To go, we're gonna keep it open. We're gonna continue to go. If you do have to hop off, I do understand, but thank you for being with us this time. Stay with us, please. But I just want to let you just acknowledge that we do appreciate that you're still hanging in here with us. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you so much.
So even if it's a heavy gerrymandered district, if that district was able to use ranked choice voting, it still has the same benefits for all those candidates. Everything that Lenny talked about, the benefits of wanting to talk to people who didn't vote for you first, wanting to share ideas, to focus on issue, to focus on problem solving, all those now become also important in heavily gerrymandered districts. So while you may be the out party in a gerrymandered district, you still would like to have people representing you that had the characteristics that Lenny was talking about. Problem solvers, people who are more interested in reaching out to others who didn't vote for them. It still has a positive benefit, even if it is a heavily gerrymandered district, meaning that only one party will probably be a candidate in a certain party will be elected.
I think that's very helpful for us to understand. And I mean, I know, Lenny, you don't have a crystal ball, but what if you had to guess, what timeline are you looking in terms of how this might start to take effect or take root in North Carolina, if at all?
Yeah, so if at all, yes, I think we'll get there. It is early stages. So Better Ballot North Carolina was just formed about a year and a half ago, right in the middle of COVID. Maybe 2 years ago now. So it's an early organization. There's still a lot of education that needs to occur. And as everybody discussed, you need General Assembly approval. So we're in the beginning stage of getting people educated about it, talking more about it, getting them comfortable, but we're starting to build a lot of momentum. We had discussions at East Carolina University this year, Duke University this year. Fair votes come down, rank the votes come down. We've had multiple presentations with League of Women Voters across the state. So we're starting to get some really good discussions going and people to understand it. I think the clearest path is to get a municipality and the voters of that municipality that say, hey, we just want the right to hold a ranked choice voting election. We just want the right. Doesn't mean we're going to do it. We want the right. Mm-hmm. And because of the particular party that's in power in North Carolina, the Republican Party, I think it would benefit us to find a Republican municipality that is willing to support that, because it would be very hard for the General Assembly to knock that down. Mm-hmm. And for the people on this meeting, the business communities are great advocates, right? So what does business want in general? They want consistency. So if one party comes in and drops business taxes to, say, 20%, they want to know that that 20% is not just this year, that it's not going to change at the next election cycle. Same thing with capital expense write-offs. Is this going to be around, or is this a one-time thing, right? Business groups want consistency. Mm-hmm. They want bipartisanship. They want people to come together, because extremes don't work in business, right? You have to have a coalition of people that come together for a complex process. So Republican-leaning municipalities that have a strong business bent, I'm really trying to discuss ranked choice voting. Mm-hmm. So for those on the line, if anyone has wherever they're from, their municipality that would be open to even hearing us out, or even if it's not your municipality, if it's an organization that you're part of, your church, your temple, your mosque, your volunteering organizations, let us get the word out there. Let us find some like-minded individuals that are supportive of ranked choice voting and get them to put pressure on the General Assembly.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you phrased it like that, Lenny, because that's exactly why the North Carolina Business Council, wanted to host this webinar, because we are looking for policies that stabilize our businesses, that strengthen our businesses. And we feel fair elections and having elections that are, somewhat predictable, because as businesses, we have to have strategic plans that go out, 5-10 years. So we can't be in a flux, and we can't be at the whim of extremes. We have to have some sense of consistency in our election process. So that's why we felt this was something very important to put in front of our members, to just see it's a nonpartisan issue. This is just looking at a better way to have a more stable democracy that really helps strengthen and grow our businesses. So I think you guys did a great job in helping us see that.
Well, I very much
Thank you,
appreciate
Vicki.
you having us as part of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, everyone who did join and stayed on until the very end, I thank you. I apologize again for the rocky beginning. For those of you who I hope will see this in a recording, again, we apologize for the mix up with the links, but thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And again, Lenny, thank you. Rachel, in her absence, we thank you. And Frank, as always, I thank you, and I love our partnership, and we'll stay on the battlefield together.
Well, thank you. And if anybody wants more, you have Lenny's
Yes.
contact information, Rachel's contact information, and just ask Vicki how to reach me, and I'll be more than happy to talk with you. And again, as Lenny says, we'll come talk to any group. Just give us the invitation.
Absolutely. And since I have Carl and Lee and Lisa here, if either of you want to chime in, I know Carl, you speak up, but did you get what you needed today? Was there anything else that you felt you were going to get, or anything else? So we'll know the next time we do this if there's any additional information that we need to have them bring. So we're ready for feedback.
I just wanted to know the pathway forward to how to get this implemented. I actually think it would be better to actually circumvent this topic and actually go through the initiative referendum process as a means of getting that passed, because it would probably be easier, and then going through the signature process to get this done first. It might be actually an easier threshold.
Interesting.
That's great. I'll look into it. I don't have great insight to that in North Carolina.
Because we don't have it.
Lisa, I think I saw you were going to chime in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was just interested in hear more about what of the concept and hearing how it would work. So it was very informative, and I appreciate it. And may look for you all to speak at some other groups that I'm involved in. So it was really good information. I think should be hopefully it can get widely promoted. So thanks.
Lisa, thank you so much. Lisa, what's your organization?
I'm with Pinnacle Financial Partners, but I do not speak on behalf of Pinnacle Financial Partners. These are my opinions only.
Yeah, I understand. I understand, but thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
And Lee, did you want to provide any feedback? We certainly would welcome that. I'm just checking. I know that's right. Lee said they were at work. So I remember that from the very beginning. They couldn't chime in because they were trying to be very low key. But thank you for joining us and sticking with us to the end.
Vicki, now that the Green Party has ballot access in the state, I'm hoping they're looked at as a party not of the spoiler party, but actually a party with ideas. And anytime you can bring new issues to prominence with different perspectives, that's always a better thing, because people start thinking about alternatives. So I actually am looking forward to something like this, but right now they're still the spoiler party.
I agree, and I agree, and I think this is probably one way to address that. And so that was one of the questions that I wanted to look at with this presentation is how do you deal with that third party, because most of the ranked voting is dealing with the two primary parties, and how does that come into play with the third party?
And that's similar to Arthur's question. So right now, North Carolina, the Democrats fought hard to keep the Green Party out, right? I think that's a fair statement. We can all do our research on that. And I'm not an advocate for the Democratic Party or the Green Party or the Republican Party, but those are the facts of what happened. If you had ranked choice voting, the Democrats wouldn't care. They wouldn't care which party came involved, because if a Democratic leaning person voted for the Green Party and nobody had a 50% majority win, then the Green Party's vote would go to the Democrats and vice versa. The reason that the two-party system don't want the third party is because we don't have ranked choice voting, meaning they know there's a spoiler effect and they're scared of it.
Gotcha.
If ranked choice voting, they wouldn't care about a third party because it doesn't have a negative impact on.
And it would give them more incentive to try to appeal and be that second choice.
Correct.
Okay, I think I got it. I think I feel that better. Because, and again, forgive me, but with the example of 92, Ross Perot, he was in a third party, am I correct? Or
He was a third party independent, yeah.
Third party independent, right? Okay, so in that case, we could have split or not split, but I don't
Yeah,
want
the
to
instant runoff.
redistribute those votes or just go with their second choice vote.
That's right. It would have been an instant runoff, and the vast majority of Ross Perot voters would have voted for George H.W. Bush, and he would have won, just
Got it.
like Gore would have likely won under Nader with Nader.
It was actually the Reform Party.
Okay.
Reform Party, yeah, I couldn't remember. Yes, exactly. Okay, that helps me clarify that particular part. Thank you, Lenny. Excellent job. I'm so glad, and hopefully you and I can talk some more.
That'd be wonderful.
As you guys are doing this, and maybe we can partner. NCBC can partner with you more as you're educating other businesses across the state.
That'd be
Thank
fantastic.
you, Carl. You're awesome. Carl is a good guy to know as well. All right, I'm going to end the recording now. If that is all, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki.
Bye.